So one of our viewers has contacted us with some questions, and Gladys is going to bring us up to date on those.
Mm-hmm. So this is from Deb from Rhode Island, and her question was, she felt like she had an experience where she lost a friend, and she felt like she learned her lesson in a part of what she needed to learn, and learned to accept what she couldn't change, and dealt with the guilt of not being able to be there as she was dying. And so her question was, what if I learned my lesson and she didn't learn hers? What is your opinion or insight on, will we go through that relationship again in another life? And also, do we repeat each lesson in every life?
Well, I think if she didn't learn hers, she might have to...
But she's saying she learned hers.
No, I'm talking about her friend that passed.
Oh.
If she hadn't learned hers, she might have to repeat that. Not necessarily that particular lesson, that particular illness. She could learn it through another lesson that she might have to learn. But she doesn't necessarily have to learn it with her friend being a part of it. Mm-hmm. Because we take on multiple roles. Mm-hmm. So she could have another friend in that situation, or it could be reversed.
I almost wonder if in that question there's also a little bit of fear of attachment to the soul. And okay, I learned my lesson, but she hadn't learned hers. Does that mean that I have to come back and go through that again with her? And I don't necessarily believe that. I think
right.
it's really about her and the evolution of her soul.
Right.
And as she's going through that space, she'll choose to come back to...
Well, her friend could have been the facilitator for her other friend to learn her lesson.
Yeah.
So maybe she was taking on that role. So even though she thought her friend didn't learn the lesson, and she didn't realize it was set up that way.
That's also assuming that we're here to learn lessons.
Yeah.
Because some people believe that we're here to learn lessons, but other people think that we're just here to experience life. And so through that life, you can learn lessons or not learn lessons, but that doesn't mean that the soul needs to necessarily come back and suffer in the same way to try to have that same experience to do it differently. I don't know that that's necessarily what God created us for.
Yeah.
Coming from that perspective, either way, if you believe in lessons or not, it's not going to be for Deb to worry about, because you create your own reality.
Yeah.
So if she's grown beyond that, then in essence, she's not going to draw that experience in. So like Joe said, somebody who is on that vibrational level would become a match for that person. So just coming at it from that perspective, if, if I was Deb, I wouldn't worry about it.
Because,
Good point.
I get that. But I also see from that perspective with the idea of lessons and experiences, can people's lack of growth hinder our lack of growth? I don't believe that. I believe it's part of the experience, but I can see where somebody learning this for the first time can feel like, hey, I'm learning and growing through this, but yet this person isn't, and they're my daughter or my husband or my mother or friend, and I don't want to come back with that experience. So it really is liberating and empowering to know that as long as you're moving through the space and your evolution of your spiritual growth, you're not tied or bind to anybody.
That's right.
At any point.
That's great.
Ever.
Right. Because, like I said, those people that might not be learning might be there to teach you to learn.
Yeah.
So don't worry about them. Worry about yourself and learning and doing the best you can, because you don't always know the roles that other people play. And a lot of times we'd like to think like we put people in certain positions that this is their role, but in actuality it might not be.
And the key is, from Deb's perspective, is if she did really get it or not, because it may come back again. So if there's still a vibrational match, like let's say the fear of losing a friend and the guilt of not being able to be there, because in this case, this person was 6.5 hours away, and it may come back again. She might have that experience with another loved one, and then also too, she could even be in a better place with it. And again, I think that if it's in your vibration, a lot of times when you're on your spiritual growth, it may come back again just to see if you've resolved that or been able to shift it in some way.
And so now coming at it again from the perspective of having lessons to learn, Deb could experience it again because the lesson might not be what she thought the lesson was. The lesson might be to release the attachment of having to bring everyone else with you on your journey.
Interesting.
Because everyone's on their own journey. So you think that the lesson that you learned is the lesson they're supposed to learn.
Right.
You know, and that's something you have to release because
that's true. Like she's tying the lessons in together, and it's really her lesson.
It may not have anything to do with the friend that passed.
Yeah,
that's right.
Most likely, it probably doesn't.
Well, if you create your own reality, then you have to go based on the idea that everything that's happening is happening specifically for you.
Well, and there was a quote that I saw just recently that really just struck me, and it said, what if people came into your life to teach you how to let go?
Sure, why not?
And I was like, oh, mind-blowing. Because from my perspective, it's always wanting that old vibration of pleasing and helping people and being there for them and fixing and saving and changing and making better. But again, what if they kept coming into your life to teach you how to set really good boundaries and say, no, thank you?
Well, to teach you that you're not the outside world.
Oh, so, absolutely. I think that's a huge part of life. I mean, a lot of times we have people that we don't get along with, or they're just not on the same, path as we are during our lives, but they're there for a reason to teach us, various lessons. And that's a perfect example.
Yeah, I think we create the purpose behind it, though, as well. So I think that, I'm not one that, I don't believe that in lessons. I don't believe that we come here to learn. I don't think that the evolution of the soul is actually one of learning. I think it's just
experience and a lesson can be the same, right?
Well, it can, but people think that the ultimate goal is the lesson. Like there's a lot of people that think that this earth is like a classroom. It's like, God, I hated school. Like that's a really crappy way to look at life for me.
Yeah, but isn't a lesson the same thing as an experience? Could it be?
Well, it depends on what their...
It's just they're just using that term.
It depends on what their energy is behind it.
But I think there's a difference between using growth as a term and a lesson.
Lesson to me sounds like punishment.
Yeah.
Like I'm doing something, I'm messing up, and now here's the consequence because of that, and it's like
experience.
Drudging.
Yeah, you could use experience just as easy.
Or growth
or progress. I think
it's actually experience is probably a little bit more descriptive of it. Yeah. Because a lesson kind of, when you hear lesson, it kind of like puts boundaries around it, and it's like, all right, this is the lesson. This one paragraph. And experience is more of, it's a wider, the multiple lessons all built around together, interwoven. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that lesson feels like something forced upon you, whereas experience is something that you create your experiences. You know, so
even if she just shift the vibration in the words from lesson, seeming like daunting and I have to come back again and learn it, to view it as an experience and an opportunity to grow, it really feels a lot lighter just saying that.
Absolutely.
There's less attachment and heaviness to it.
Less stress, less everything to it.
Because now you're not trying to bring someone with you. Now you're just like being in the moment and saying, oh,
she was part of the experience.
And pass, fail. You know what I mean? It's like lesson, pass, fail. Experience is an experience is an experience. And you could be, you could get part of it and not the other part of it. And so...
And recreate it in other ways. And not even losing somebody, but in a different form.
Right.
Yeah. So I think that's the way to look at it. I think it's to don't worry about the other person. Be in the moment. Be present with your experience. Don't expect everyone to have the same experience as you. Because if we're all here to have the same experience, then there's no reason for this experiment or whatever you want to call it, that we are this creation. We're here to experience and express God in multiple ways.
And when you have an experience like that, and it moves you in such a way where it's so powerful that it's giving you an opportunity to think about it and process it and dissect it and dig into it, chances are it's something for your spiritual growth.
Right. You're right, because you're analyzing it internally.
That it's impacted you enough to give it more thought.
Right.
And then also, too, the fact that she came to the place where she felt like she learned the lesson. Like she was able to say, I learned the lesson.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't want to get stuck in it because she didn't.
Yep.
And I can totally see where that's coming from. But how liberating and freeing, saying it's got nothing to do with them and everything to do with you.
Right.
And if you've got it, amen, sister. Keep going.
And
Right.
the point of, I think, this whole conversation is to realize, all right, you grew from that. And now the fear that you have of repeating it is showing you what you need to grow into next.
Yeah.
Good point.
Where your next
Yeah.
step is,
Right.
where to go forward.
Uh-huh.
You know, of releasing that attachment, of releasing the
Fear.
fact that everything has to be in line with you, that everyone around you has to come up at the same level with you, and that they have to experience the same things. That's really hard for people, especially
Yeah.
parents or people you're close friends with.
They might
or-
not even be aware of it,
Well, it's
that it's
It
happening.
can be
Yeah.
frustrating for people.
Yeah.
They feel like they're doing their best to help these people step up, and they
then
don't realize it's about them, not the other people.
Yeah. If you're out, we had a conversation about this before the show started. If your outside world is really a reflection of what's inside,
Yeah.
then you would look at the outside world, and instead of trying to control it and bring it with you, you fix yourself and realize that everything else is just going to work
Yeah.
itself out.
Mm-hmm.
It takes yourself out of the drama.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's good. That was a good question.
Yeah.
Good question,
Absolutely.
Deb. Great.
And so I think, let's go beyond that belief. So now, if
Mm-hmm.
people, instead of saying lessons and that you have to do something, and
Mm-hmm.
let's really look at it and say, all right, the reason that we're happy is we're progressing, and you either progress towards the story that, so you get, people have two stories, the story of who they are and the story of who they think they should be. And so you always feel better when you're moving towards the story of who you think you should be and away from the story of who you think you are. You know, and so in doing this, in learning this and feeling good, she's making progress towards who she thinks she should be, what she thinks life should be. Because really the struggle is fighting against what is and what you think should be.
Yeah.
That's where people suffer. So the part
What
of
do
this,
you mean think should be by the ego, or think what the soul,
So-
like your
well, I just think,
spiritual growth?
so I think in everyone's mind, they think like life should be this way. Like I should be with a partner that thinks the same way spiritually, and my friends should think the same way, and everyone should love each other and there should be peace, and I shouldn't have to worry about money.
Mm-hmm.
I shouldn't have to worry about finances. You know, I should be able to do a job I love. Like that's the story people say should be.
Mm-hmm.
And then they look at their life and they say, you know, my partner's not where I am spiritually, and that really drives me nuts.
Yeah.
And sometimes my friends don't get what I'm talking about, and I'm struggling with money. It's so hard. So the suffering is because you think one thing should be, and where you are isn't there.
Yeah, it's a mismatch.
And instead
but
of
is that like the mind and like a disconnect of the mind and body, or
Is that a
just
cultural thing?
this is where
or-
you are, or
I think what it is not accepting what is.
yeah,
So if she was in the moment accepting what is, there wouldn't be a question about what her friend, if her friend was doing that. There wouldn't be a question, am I going to have to repeat this again? Because you're loving this moment so much, you're not fearful about what comes next.
Mm-hmm.
So part of, you know, if you want to say lesson or whatever, part of this is really to be present in the moment, to accept what is,
Yeah.
and to love it with everything you have.
Mm-hmm.
To love the fact that your friend wasn't in the same place as you, and because of that, you had this growth.
Yeah.
That's amazing. But if her friend was right there with her, then maybe it wouldn't have happened the same way, you know? So
And she wouldn't have been impacted the way she was.
exactly. And
Sometimes you just have to accept it.
yep. But
And not try to pick it apart, right?
and think of though how just by fearing that she'll have to repeat it again, there's a part of her that's reliving what she used to be. There's a part of her that's being pulled back to the story, the old story, instead of accepting the fact that she's moved beyond that she's in this new place.
And also, too, I think what's really important, especially for something like this, is giving yourself an opportunity to have these experiences and sit with it. I think so many times people just suppress it and move on.
Yeah.
And they have these emotions and they're like, oh, I shouldn't feel this way because I'm a spiritual person, or I've moved past this. And then they suppress it. And what happens is it just keeps repeating over and over again. And I think
And again,
the fact that
that's
she's
what
sitting
should
with
be
this,
and what is. They're not accepting what is, and they're saying it should be this way.
Mm-hmm.
I shouldn't feel this way. Well, if something upsetting happens to you, you should feel upset
Yeah.
about it. If something sad happens, you should cry. You
Absolutely.
should be authentic to that moment
Mhm.
because that's what's real right now. That's what is.
And I think those suppressed emotions is what creates this beast in the mind to go on and on and on and on about it. When if you just give it permission to move through your body, feel the frustration, feel the anger, feel the sadness, feel the grief, the pain, and just let it move through you, I really believe your internal guidance system will give you way more clarity internally than anything outside can give you, right? But the problem is we're never taught to sit with, and I have to say, we live in a society where everything's external, fix me, save me, change me. I truly believe that the answers, given enough time, it may not come right away. I've been plenty of times I've sat in meditation on things and just sat with problem solving and then got nothing. But the next morning when I was brushing my teeth, boom, there was the answer. And I was like, gosh. So giving yourself permission to just feel it out, problem solve in your mind, but again, not spiral.
And I think, and especially in this society now, we're overstimulated with all this outside stuff going on that, it takes us away from sitting down, like you said, and just having a quiet moment and trying to figure out, how to just accept some of these things.
Yeah. And they always say what you resist persists. It's like,
Absolutely.
Have you ever sat there with a thought and said, I don't want to think about this? It's like, I don't want to think about that test I have to take tomorrow. God, I don't want to think about that test. God, that test is so frustrating to me. I just don't want to think about it. All you can think about it is by trying not to think about it. All you're doing is thinking about it because you're resisting it.
Yeah.
As opposed to just letting the
it.
thought come in and say, I'm really nervous about this. I can feel my heart rate kind of speeds up a little bit. I get a little sweaty. This is interesting. I wonder why I feel this way, and just allow yourself to be there. And like you're saying, it would pass through. Yeah. Because you're not your thoughts. You're the space that the thoughts exist in.
And you'll eventually go, well, what's the worst case scenario? Well, I'm not going to die. So, and if I fail it, then what's the worst thing? I have to take the class again, and then I'm not going to have to take the class again. So eventually, by giving in to the space and sitting with it eventually works. It's like a knot that just eventually unties. And this is why we say meditation is so important, and sitting with it and giving yourself permission to open up to receive whatever that internal wisdom is.
Yep. And going back to what you said, Joe, about the overstimulus, we have so many thoughts going through our head at once now that you've got millions of thoughts going through your head like every second. And so you can't process all that. So you gravitate towards the ones that are familiar. What meditation does is you allow yourself to sit in the space and to actually see what your thoughts are. And then you can see where you stand vibrationally. You start to understand your truth, and then you can choose which thoughts to...
You observe your thoughts.
Yeah, exactly.
And pick the ones you want.
And you can do that, but when there's so much going on every day, if you don't take the time to slow down and just observe what's going on, observe your thoughts, you're just going to keep repeating and repeating and repeating, because you're going to just take the thoughts that are familiar, because there's so much stimulus coming in. You can't process it.
Information overload. And I think that's why there's a lot of angry people out there, a lot of bully energy right now, because there's so much built up inside of them, all this emotion that
they don't know how to vent it. Yeah.
No, and so they're just now bullying and angry and addictive tendencies and numbing out, and things are getting like, it's like the beast. It's like poking the bear. And I think movements like ours, with teaching people how to go within and sit with it and create space for it, is going to be even so much more powerful, because it does work. It's helpful. That's why I say, like, when you're in that space, I had an experience recently where I was just frustrated, and I did something I wasn't proud of. I told God to turn around. I was going to do something he wasn't proud of. I did it anyway. But when I left, I was
wait a minute, what'd you do? You can't just let us all hang there.
Oh, jeez.
We want details.
Well, and
let's hear what St. Lee Gladys did.
Yeah. Was it fun, Gladys?
And this is why I share it.
Hi, everybody. If you like what you watched, please subscribe on YouTube and like us on Facebook. And check out our website at alwaysconsiderthesource.com.
Hey, if you want us to come out to your location and do a live setup, we'd love to do that. Continue to send in your questions, and we look forward to interacting with you.
And remember, always consider the source.